The little buzz from my phone came at 3:47 on a regular Tuesday afternoon. It was a message in our big family group chat, the one with 17 cousins, aunts, and uncles all talking at once. My mother had sent a note telling everyone we were having a big family dinner that Saturday at 6 in the evening and that everyone really needed to come because we had exciting news to share about my sister Jessica and her big promotion at work. Jessica has always been the golden child, the daughter who did everything the right way. I was sitting in the back of a car on my way to an important meeting with my board of directors when I read the message. My assistant had put this meeting on my calendar weeks ago, and it was something I simply could not miss. I took a deep breath and typed back a short message saying I could not make it because of a work commitment. The replies started coming in almost before I could put my phone away. One said that, of course, I could not make it and asked what could possibly be more important than family. My mom and my sister Sarah both chimed in, saying this was Jessica's big moment and surely my little job could wait for one night. My brother Derek joined in too, telling me he was moving his whole schedule around to be there. Even my dad said he was very disappointed. I sighed and put my phone back into my bag. I had learned a long time ago that trying to explain things to my family was just a waste of time. They had made up their minds about who I was years ago, and nothing I said was going to change that. So the Saturday dinner went on without me. While they were eating and celebrating, I was in a glass-walled office looking at money projections for the third quarter with my financial officer. My company, LifeBridge Systems, was just about to close a very significant round of investment funding. We were being valued at $1.8 billion, and we're only 3 months away from releasing a heart monitoring system that would change how patients are cared for after surgery. But my family did not know any of that. To them, I just worked in some technical job in healthcare, and they never really tried to understand what that meant. It all started when I was 23 years old, fresh out of MIT with degrees in biomedical engineering and computer science. 6 companies wanted to hire me, offering salaries anywhere from $180,000 to $240,000 a year. Instead, I chose a tiny startup in San Francisco that paid me $75,000 and gave me 2% ownership. My family was completely shocked. My dad, who worked as a manager at a pharmaceutical company and made $140,000 a year, told me at a Sunday dinner that I was throwing away my expensive education. My mom, a high school chemistry teacher, agreed. Between the two of them, they made around $210,000, owned their house, had their retirement savings, and lived by the rules. They thought I was making a terrible mistake. My sister Jessica had graduated 2 years before me with a business degree and was already earning $82,000 as a senior worker at a medical supply company. My mom never stopped pointing this out. She would mention Jessica's health insurance and savings plan, then ask what I had. What I had was a tiny piece of a company nobody had heard of, stock options that might never be worth a penny, and 16-hour workdays in a converted warehouse where I ate cheap noodles 4 nights a week. But I truly believed in what we were building. The founder, Dr. Chin, had lost his wife to a post-surgical complication that should have been caught much sooner. He had spent 8 years developing a wireless system that could detect when a heart was in trouble before things became dangerous. The technology was extraordinary, and I knew it could help real people. 3 years after I joined, that little company was acquired for $180 million. My 2% stake became $3.6 million after taxes. I was 26 years old. I decided not to tell my family about the money. They knew I had a new job, but assumed I was just moving from one unstable situation to another. Around that same time, Jessica had been promoted to a management role, making $95,000. My mom threw a party for her and invited 37 relatives. I took my money and quietly started LifeBridge Systems with 2 former colleagues. We had seen a serious gap in how patients were monitored after leaving the hospital. We built an intelligent system that could detect tiny changes in heart rhythm, blood pressure, and oxygen levels, with programs capable of predicting heart attacks or strokes nearly 47 hours before any symptoms appeared. We started the company in my small apartment, sleeping 4 hours a night and living on pizza and stubborn belief. 2 years later, we had government approval for our first product. 4 years after that, we had contracts with 147 hospitals across 18 states. 6 years in, we had 412 employees and $180 million in annual revenue. But at family dinners, when someone asked what I did, I would just say I worked in medical technology. They would nod and move on to talking about Derek's new manager title at a shipping company or Jessica's latest accomplishment. The dinner I missed was exactly what I expected it to be. My cousin Rachel sent me pictures later that night. Jessica stood in my parents' living room with a glass of champagne, announcing she was now a director of product strategy, earning $142,000 a year. My mom looked radiant with her arm around her. My dad raised his glass. Derek posted on social media about how his sister was out there making things happen, which felt like it was aimed directly at me. I just liked the post and kept moving. 3 weeks later, there was another family dinner that I was actually able to attend. I arrived 15 minutes late because I was wrapping up a call with our lead investor about our upcoming valuation. I walked in wearing jeans and a simple sweater. Jessica was dressed in a professional suit as though she had just come from a boardroom. She made a comment about it being nice of me to finally show up and asked if traffic was bad. I said yes and left it at that. At the dinner table, Derek looked at me and asked what I actually did all day. I gave my usual answer about working on medical systems and making sure everything worked together properly to help patients. My mom said it sounded very technical in a tone that made clear she had no interest in understanding further. Derek asked if I managed any people. At that point, I was leading over 400 employees with 7 executives reporting directly to me, but I just said I managed a few. Jessica laughed softly and said that was adorable, then told everyone she managed 15 people and oversaw a $47 million budget. She asked what my budget was. I said I didn't really work with budgets, which was technically true since I approved them rather than worked within them. Our annual operating budget was $96 million. My dad said it sounded like I was more of a technical worker than someone on a leadership path. I said it was something like that. Jessica told me there was nothing wrong with being a regular worker and that not everyone could handle the stress of real leadership. I kept eating and said nothing back. Then Derek asked how much I made. I said I made enough. Jessica guessed around 90 or 100,000, explaining that tech jobs pay well, but you hit a ceiling without management responsibility. I said I was comfortable. My salary was actually $285,000, not including bonuses or the value of my ownership stake. My total net worth at that point was around $47 million, but they did not ask for details, so I did not share them. My mom beamed at Jessica and said she was so proud that someone in the family had finally broken into 6 figures. 6 weeks later, Jessica announced in the family chat that her company was sending her to a major healthcare technology conference in Boston. She said it was the most important industry gathering in the country, where all the top leaders come together. My mom asked if she would meet anyone famous. Jessica said probably, adding that the keynote speaker was usually someone from a billion-dollar company. My phone was buzzing continuously as I read through all of this, because I had just accepted the invitation to give the opening keynote at that exact same conference. I could have said something right then. Instead, I just typed that it sounded like a wonderful opportunity and told her to have fun. March 16th was cold and gray in Boston. I had flown in the night before and stayed at the hotel connected to the conference center. I went over my speech one last time, ordered room service, and thought about the 2,000 people who would be in that room, including my sister sitting somewhere in the crowd. I thought about calling her, but I was tired. Tired of being spoken over. Tired of being the family member everyone assumed was quietly failing. I went to sleep and woke up early, put on a navy blue suit made specifically for me, and went downstairs. The main hall was enormous. The organizers were checking lights and sound when I arrived. I waited in a private room behind the stage and watched the room fill on a small monitor. At 8:20, I spotted Jessica. She was in the 7th row wearing a red dress and blazer, sitting with her colleagues, looking excited and completely unaware of what was about to happen. The lights went down and a voice filled the room, welcoming everyone and introducing the morning's keynote speaker. My face appeared on the giant screen. The announcer said my name and described me as the founder and chief executive of LifeBridge Systems, a company with tools in 147 hospitals that had saved nearly 3,000 lives. It mentioned that the company was currently valued at $1.8 billion and that I had been recognized by major publications as one of the most innovative leaders in healthcare technology. I watched Jessica on the monitor. She looked at the screen, then at her program, then back at the screen. Her mouth fell open. She grabbed the arm of the person next to her. Then I walked out onto the stage to a standing ovation from 2,000 people. I could not see every face clearly under the lights, but I could see Jessica. She was standing with everyone else, but her hands were completely still. She looked like someone who had just been handed information she could not process. I stepped up to the podium and waited for the room to quiet. I began talking about eating pizza in my apartment and worrying about a problem that hospitals across the country were ignoring. I spoke for 45 minutes. I talked about Dr. Chin and why the work mattered. I talked about a grandmother named Maria who went home to her grandchildren because our system flagged a problem 41 hours before it became a stroke. I talked about a teacher named James who did not die from a blood clot because we caught it 38 hours early. When I finished, the room rose again. Jessica was standing, but she was not clapping. She was just staring at me. I found her later by our company's display booth. She was reading the patient stories printed on the banners. I walked over and said hello. She asked in a flat voice if this was really what I did. I told her it was. She asked about the valuation and I confirmed it was 1.8 billion. She asked why I never told them. I said I had told them I worked in healthcare technology. She said I never mentioned running the entire company. I said she never really asked. Her face flushed and she said they talked about careers all the time. I reminded her that every time I tried to say something, the conversation shifted back to her or someone else. She said if I had just explained it properly, they would have understood. I asked her honestly whether she would have believed me or whether she would have assumed I was exaggerating to compete with her. She did not answer. I told her my work did not need their validation to be real. A colleague approached me about a potential partnership, and I had to excuse myself. I told her we could talk more later. That Sunday dinner, my mom had ordered fancy Italian food instead of making pot roast. My dad started by saying they all owed me a serious apology. My mom said if they had known what I was doing, they would have treated me very differently. I asked her gently why that should matter. I told them my success should not be the reason they listened to me. Derek said they had always included me, and I reminded him of the dinner they held without me, the comments about my little job, and the years of being talked over at every table. My mom said I was always so quiet about work. I told her I was only as quiet as they made me feel I needed to be. Jessica sat without speaking, tears running silently down her face. I told them I was not there to make anyone feel terrible, but the truth was they had decided long ago that I was the one making bad choices, and they never once questioned that story. My dad said they were wrong and he was sorry. I told him I appreciated it and asked if we could simply start over. My mom asked me to tell them about the company, so I did. I told them about the hard, early days, the first hospital contract, the letters from families who still had someone at their dinner table because of what we built. They listened this time, really listened. Derek apologized for his comments, and Jessica apologized for making my work sound small. She asked how much I actually made. I told her it was more than I needed. My dad asked directly if I was a millionaire. I said yes. 3 months later, Jessica called to tell me she was thinking about leaving her job. She said she had been so focused on climbing that she had forgotten to check whether she even wanted to reach the top. She asked if I would talk her through it. We spent a long time on the phone that evening, discussing what she was good at and what actually made her feel useful. It was the first real conversation we had ever had as equals rather than competitors, and it meant more to me than any standing ovation ever could. 2 years after that, we took LifeBridge Systems public. The whole family came to New York for the occasion, wearing shirts with the company name, cheering when I rang the opening bell. By the end of the day, the company was worth nearly $9 billion. At dinner that night, Jessica made a toast. She said she was glad they finally believed in me, even though I had never once needed them to. We raised our glasses together. My family is not perfect, but they are mine. And for the first time in a very long time, we were finally all sitting at the same table, actually listening to one another. That was everything I had ever wanted.